stuff in the world is just getting worse and worse. Wars are always going to continue. People are going to be experiencing this.
We've asked him to do things that we can't really understand.
The veteran has changed. If he has seen combat, he's changed for life.
Toughest thing is being alone, being lost in your mind, scared of everything, the anxiety. It's the worst.
It was jungle. The colors, the muzzle flashes, everything was going all at one time, and I was right in the middle of it. And people tried to, help me. But the hands that were on me trying to help me were the ones in my dream that were attacking me.
They didn't tell you, after every corner that you pie around, or that you go around in every house, that you start pieing upstairs and going up into your fatal, deadly fronts. That if a guy is there, the first guy is almost definitely shot in the chest.
What they got is an experience in one hell of a situation, watching their friends, their brothers get blown apart, sitting right next to them.
I remember we found over 100 bomb vests in East Baghdad in the invasion that would fit people like you and people that are 2 years old.
I've had things I had to tell my kids. I had to give an order to kill 12 children. Now you think that's easy to live with? Before I couldn't even talk about that. But they was all wired with bombs going into a compound. We knew we couldn't get to them in time to save this group of Marines, so we did what we had to do. I threw up and cried for 2 days.
Guys were fishing bodies out of the river. America doesn't hear that we can't just let dead bodies sit there. And so they don't teach you how to deal with bloating bodies that have been executed in the desert and the smells that come from that. And then you have to search them and find out who they are, why they were killed. And so it's like burned into your brain.
When you find your buddies physically mutilated and stacked in a pile in the middle of a path, that's pretty hard to take. And it builds a crust around you of hate. And when you get home, you're still carrying that crust of hate. And you have to learn to live with that and control it.
A post-traumatic stress disorder is a chronic psychiatric condition comprised of symptoms of anxiety, oftentimes having to do with intrusive traumatic thoughts, negative and adverse emotions, which can affect a person's actions and behavior. And the symptoms of the condition can affect a person across all areas of life, psychological, educational, vocational, and social.
We called it shell shock back in that day. I even had it.
Joined the Marine Corps in 1964. I went to Vietnam in 65, and I came out of Vietnam in 68, and got out of the Marine Corps for 3 years. I went back into Marine Corps, and I didn't have any problems till I retired.
So in World War I, the U.S. military realized that all these people were getting shell shock, and they were stuck in hospitals, and they were away from combat and so on. So they developed a rapid re-entry program. World War II, the same kind of thing happened, and they had forgotten all about that, no institutional memory. So the British were doing it. The British were re-entering them rapidly, and so the U.S. military went to the British and said, "This is great, where did you develop this?" And they said, "Well, we got it from you in World War I." So then we forgot about it again, and then along came Vietnam, and it was realized that people were developing the same kind of entity, and it was renamed PTSD at that point in time. And the added problem during the Vietnam War was nobody liked the military. So that really added to the problem when they came back to the U.S. So since then, there's been a recognition of this entity. And of course, you have the combination of both the wars in the Middle East and 9/11 that really made it pop. So there's lots and lots of discussion and lots of exposure, but it hasn't necessarily moved public attitudes, I don't think, tremendously around this, because you have the associated kind of stigma and so on.
When I got out of military, I didn't even know what PTSD was. I didn't know anyone who had it, never even had any acknowledgement of it.
I started working the road, and obviously I saw a lot of stuff that I wasn't used to, and you know, my adrenaline was going, and it was awesome, and I still love that aspect. But I started to act a little different.
It's as though functions of the brain were changed. You didn't get shrapnel in your head, but you passed the capacity of your brain to take this as a normal memory and give it back to you in autobiographical memory form. It's different when it's a trauma memory.
My first signs of PTSD, I was drinking daily. I was drinking actually a gallon of whiskey a day plus beer. Suicide thoughts, homicidal thoughts, just not want to be around, the anger, hiding, isolation. You want to leave, but leaving causes so much anxiety that you just push yourself back. And then eventually, everything that I was holding in, I came to the point where I took 6 bottles of pills and was ready to go.
It's human nature to avoid those situations or conditions which we anticipate are going to be anxiety provoking. So, of course, in adults, one way of avoiding stressful situations is through sedation.
Alcohol was a way for me to hide from my fears, from my problems, from the demons that were in me. As long as I was drinking, they weren't there. The next morning they were, and the only way to get rid of them is to go drink. I didn't drink to enjoy it, I drank to drink.
There's a nucleus called the amygdala in your brain, and that's the seat of strongly held emotions, a variety of other things. And so, in part, what happens when you have PTSD is you have a sick amygdala. So your amygdala becomes much more reactive, and that in part accounts for cues that can set off strongly emotionally held memories of trauma and that sort of thing.
When I got home, I was wound up like an 8-day clock. You touch me, you make any noise behind me, I'm coming after you. Not because I wanted to, it was just instinct of survival.
Yes, we're definitely wired while in service. Coming back into the civilian life, it's when I said I lost my identity.
You're really wired. You're looking out for danger. You're easily startled. When you are startled, you just jump. Think of it as though your body has moved into the mode that it has to be in to deal with a lethal threat. And at that point, your body isn't sensing joy or serenity. It's in an alarm mode. You're ready to fight or flee or fall down so that you're not of interest to a predator.
I'd been home for just about a year, and I had a real bad dream. And I took a 300-pound water bed and turned it upside down in a bedroom and pretty much destroyed our bedroom. And my wife said all I was doing was screaming out orders. And it took me probably a week before I could stop shaking.
I deal with a lot of flashbacks. So sometimes while I'm driving or like in a grocery store, something could be dropped and literally my heart will stop and I get shaky and I want to run away, but I've come to learn not to run away from it.
I always tell people, you know, think of your best Christmas. And they're like, well, I remember my grandma's apple pie, and every time I smell apple pie, I go back to that Christmas when I was, you know, this age and stuff like that. It's like that, but with trauma. You smell something and it goes to negative stuff and it kind of rewires your brain so you don't go back to, oh, I smell apple pie, I remember this good memory. It's, oh, I heard this loud noise and it took me back to here.
For me, you know, it's like a blurriness to the side and everything slows down. And then all of a sudden, it's like a click a click that things start looking like I'm traveling down in a vehicle like I was overseas and I had my weapon on me. You know, I have that emotional terror of fear that I'm about to, you know, go into something that I'm not going to like, and I hope I make it out.
So usually if someone approaches a veteran, it could be scary because you don't know where they are.
So it could be vivid, it could be subtle, but it's a trauma memory rather than an autobiographical memory. The mind hasn't been driven into psychosis. It's been altered into a state in which that memory comes back when you don't want it.
I have a deep fear. I'm afraid to have my back to the door. I always want to be able to watch all entrances. I always have to walk into a room and look for an exit so I know how to get out of it.
They can't focus on you. They're twitching, they're nervous, any movement, they're looking at it.
You can really see it in their eyes when they call it like the death stare, when you're looking at someone but you're also looking right through them.
There's very interesting work that shows that the brain actually adapts to these kinds of situations. There's lots of what we call plasticity in the brain. And so in a combat situation, you become much more alert. You become much more aware of what's around you. And other kind of functions ratchet down a little bit that aren't so important in that setting. So now you come home, and now you're still hyper alert. You still have this tremendous situational awareness, and you're still looking for all the things that could hurt you. And even in the best of circumstances, it takes a while for your brain really to return to its previous state.
Toughest thing is being alone, being lost in your mind, scared of everything, the anxiety. It's the worst.
There are so many obstacles that our veterans face. The first oftentimes being that there is so much pressure for them to be strong and to appear strong. And receiving help does not oftentimes conjure up the idea of being strong.
We, as in our country and the leaders in our country, have trained these individuals to be tough. They have trained them to get out there and do a job that is something that you or I would never ask for. And that may be to take someone else's life, to drive down a road, to go discharge IEDs.
You're forced to do things that the average American didn't do. They didn't tell you what to do after you start killing people. They didn't tell you how to turn that switch off.
They're highly trained. They've been through a ton of stuff. But once you get into the real world, it's like, how do I apply this? I'm highly trained, but I'm highly trained to do something that, you know, I can't sit behind a desk. I can't be around a bunch of people. I can't go to a social gathering after work and act like everything's okay.
So we've asked them to do things that we can't really understand. Not only that, we are putting them through multiple tours of duty. So we don't have time to retrain you. We need to get you back. We need to get you going. And when you lose someone, they're often told, take a few minutes, and then we gotta go.
And went to this major, and he sat there and told us, you've had pretty bad experiences, you know, and you probably had to do things that was against your grain, but I want you to just forget about it. And I looked at him and I said, sir, in due respect to your rank and your position, you need a doctor worse than I do. I said, I'll never forget it. I'll learn to live with it.
Hey, it happened in the past, get over it. Just shake it, you know. It's really not that bad, or can you just snap out of it? These are things that I hear all the time, but they see somebody with post-traumatic stress and they're like, he looks like everybody else. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with them. It's like, well, we'll spend some time with one of us. You're gonna see that there's something different.
Most of these behavioral disorders have both a biological piece and a psychological piece, and they're really intertwined. And so it's impossible for many people really, to deal with these severe kinds of disorders alone.
This isn't something that they want to have. These feelings, they want to come back and be normal. You know, they want to come back and hug their family and kiss their kids and sit down at a barbecue and watch the fireworks and not flinch. They want to be able to wrap their arms around their wives at night and not have dreams and wake up in a sweat or, God forbid, you know, maybe having a flashback where they may be injuring someone else in real life and they don't even know it.
There needs to be a proactive approach instead of something reactive. We've seen enough of what it causes, and you know, it shouldn't be somebody's political opinion or agenda to use post-traumatic stress as leverage for anything. It needs to be that this is a true injury. There's tons of people who are affected. Stuff in the world is just getting worse and worse. Wars are always going to continue. People are going to be experiencing this, and there needs to be something done about it.
We've spent billions of dollars to go to these wars. What are we spending to help them reintegrate and to help them recover? They wrote a blank check to this country. You know, they're still paying on that. This is America, and we've got to do better because of that blank check.
Part of the intervention in treating the individual with post-traumatic stress is also treating the family, providing counseling, education, and guidance to the family members on how to best interact with the patient with post-traumatic stress.
I've had a lot of hardships with my the dynamics of my marriage. My wife, she wasn't with me when I was in law enforcement. But she got to see the repercussions of it, and she's somebody who stuck by my side.
You're looking at divorces, jail time because of abuse, verbal and physical. I've lost trust from 95% of the people I know. They just back away because they're terrified.
To watch Kyle suffer, we were suffering too, and probably one of the hardest things for me was just constantly being on edge, and I know my husband was the same way. Anytime the phone rang, it's just a constant, is this the call? And that was the hardest, not knowing when we would get the call.
You have to understand them. You have to understand what these families go through. The wife or the husband's worried every single breathing minute of every single day. Am I going to get that phone call? Am I going to get that telegram? They live with the same kind of stress that their partner is living with. The family, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, it's a tense moment for everybody.
My family, sometimes they're questionable whether they want me around. Now they do. Now they do. But there was a time when it was, no, I don't think you should come over. But the world is different now, and I'm different.
Kyle is an amazing guy with a huge heart. He has overcome lots of challenges. He's my inspiration. He is one of the strongest people. He is the strongest person, I should say, that I know.
They're so proud of me. I get told every day about how inspirational I am, and they call me a hero now and before they wouldn't. And it feels great.
These are people who are physically, emotionally, and morally strong, even heroic and admirable. And they get post-traumatic stress injury. So it isn't a matter of weakness. We're ethically better at understanding and dealing with this pervasive injury.
A veteran definitely has to recognize the PTSD. You can't save them. They need to ask for help and save themselves. A soldier that does not get help will eventually lose everything he has around.
It is real. It is not something that is imagined, and it's far more underdiagnosed by those who have it and by general physicians out there.
PTSD, it's not a joke. They say 22 soldiers die a day, and most of them is because they're not getting the help they need for their PTSD. And I hate that because I've lost 6 or 7 buddies from PTSD myself.
I just lost a friend 2 weeks ago, or a week ago. 28 years old, 6-month-old son, hung himself. 2 tours in Afghanistan.
If he doesn't get treatment, he will live in hell. He will live in pure hell. He will hide rather than face the world.
This affects 10% of women, 5% of men. If you get it, there's nothing wrong with you. If you get it, get help.
For an individual who has post-traumatic stress, who actively seeks and participates in treatment, the prognosis is cautiously optimistic.
I know several soldiers and brothers and sisters who have been diagnosed with PTSD and have gotten help and their lives 360.
Go to the closest Veterans Administration anywhere, and it doesn't have to be a veterans clinic or a veterans hospital. It's any veterans organization. To VFW, go to the American Legion, go to some place that centralizes or focuses on veterans. It's always available. All you have to do is seek out and find that help.
Once you start to get relief, you start to get a sense of how you might have been before you survived your injury.
I can only encourage our veterans that for all they have given to us, that it is the least we can do to give back to them.
If somebody wants to help a veteran, learn about what he has done, where he's been, or something like that. Find another veteran who's got a lot of time out. Talk to them about how to deal with a veteran. But you always have to remember a veteran has changed. If he has seen combat, he's changed for life.
I like to use, I don't understand what you've been through. Is there anything I can do to help? It's just like anything, unless you've been through it, you're not gonna fully get it. But don't let that deter you from having that support group.
You have to talk their language. You have to calm them down. Change subjects. Start talking about family. How's your family doing? You know, get them out of the mindset that they're in to where they're starting to relax.
If you notice there's a bunch of people around, get them in a safe place. You know, maybe take them in a room and leave the door open and sit with them.
From my perspective, what you try to do is what's called reframing. That's at least one way to put it. And so these people often say, well, it's my fault. Again, they have this very negative thinking that we were talking about earlier. And so reframing whatever happened in lots of different ways. Well, are you sure it was really your fault?
We weren't created as humans to operate alone, and half the stuff that we were involved in, you have somebody there who's coming for backup if they weren't there, and knowing that is huge.
Let the veteran know that he's got support. You've got his back, which we was trained to have. Then he will relax a lot quicker.
Be there for them when they don't want you there, to let them know you love them, and if you can't, they need to know that there's somebody out there that does love them and want to help them.
Don't try to make somebody change. Allow them to change. Don't make them follow your path, but show them how to go down your path.
They say, well, PTSD is a disease and it will be with us for life. And if you stop dealing with it, it's going to creep right back up on you. So you have to work every single day.
What really happens in PTSD is people construct a narrative, and humans are storytellers. So people construct a story around whatever the trauma was. And so what you really try to do is try to help people reconstruct that narrative.
People with PTSD are not bad people. They're sick people. And that's all they want. They want to get well. And if we can help them, understand them, and we can deal with it.
What you laid out is really a team, a community of individuals who really need to come together to support our veterans. Physician, family, community supports, law enforcement, pastoral support, educational supports, all trying to lend a hand in coming together and helping provide that safety net of support for our veterans.
You know, that's where the communities play a part. Is if they're aware that people are having issues, you know, I've seen communities do wonderful things. You know, they bring those people in and they make them their own.
So we can put some things together to reinvigorate the sense of honor and of purpose and of participation in the team and in the community.
When you see a veteran, thank him. That's all you got to do.
But learning about it and getting sober and stuff, my world has changed. I live in a good world now. I enjoy waking up. I enjoy looking out my window. I have changed, but it's because I learned how to control the PTSD.
Just don't quit. There's quitting, you didn't quit before. I'm not a victim of what happened or a series of events. I survived it. And once you have that mentality that you're not going to quit and that you're going to survive, you're going to keep going. It's going to be hard, but once what you went through before was hard. You survived it, so keep moving forward with that.